just to give you an idea of how they weaponized this poll. And Henry Jackson Society, for those of you who don't know, is a neoconservative think tank. It was formerly run by Douglas Murray, who infamously said that conditions for Muslims must be made harder across the board in Europe or UK. So he's not necessarily a friend of Islam, you can say, and arguably Muslims too. So they brought up a whole bunch of poll results. This is where I first heard this poll that was conducted by Henry Jackson Society, and there has been some criticisms of this poll, the methodology, the fact that they don't ask the exact same questions to non-Muslim British people as they do to British Muslims. In all the questions, but they brought up things like this just so you guys can hear what was being discussed. So they did say 23% of Muslims. So he said that only 23% of Muslims don't actively want Sharia in the UK.
Don't actively want it.
Actively want it, right? Which is kind of weird. Like, why aren't you mentioning people actually say they want it? Why are you saying, oh, these people don't actually only?
Yeah, but that means 3/4 do want it. I mean, that's the positive thing, isn't it?
Yeah. And so they'll say things like this. They'll say 52% want it to be illegal to show a picture of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. 57% want halal food to be compulsory in all schools and hospitals. I'm just reading out what they are saying in these polls.
Yeah.
Only 28% are opposed to making homosexuality illegal. Only 20. Yes, so presumably that's not enough people. And then they said 16% of Muslims, only 16% of Muslims would be opposed to a Muslim political party. It's interesting because only, as in, like, Muslims must agree to a set of things that they must be against. Otherwise, if there's not enough of them doing so, then this is bad. Then he said that 46% of British Muslims have more sympathy for Hamas than Israel. And you can probably detect the misleading, way this is cast, because 46% of British Muslims have more sympathy for Hamas than Israel. It's kind of like, if you're choosing between, the devil and was it the blue sea? Yeah. You might say, well, I prefer the blue sea, right? Than the devil, right? You say, oh, I can't believe you prefer, being chucked into an ocean or something.
Well, but you said that many Muslim majority countries do see that organization as a resistance, Palestinian resistance, like the president of Turkey, for example, the state of Qatar, for example. They don't have that negative view. I know in Britain, they do, but there is a plurality of views on this globally. The United Nations has not designated that organization as a terrorist organization. They could do, but they haven't. And I mean, I have to be careful what I say here, because obviously I could be prosecuted. What I'm trying to say is there's a plurality of views globally on the status and nature and the goodness or badness of that organization. So, Muslims have chosen one view, but there are other views.
Yeah. I mean, as I said, my point was a philosophical point that if you say, well, let's say take this organization, regardless of whether it's good and bad, and you put it up against something that is, I think we could all say objectively far, far worse by the numbers of people they kill, by the amount of time and duration and extent of oppression and denial of rights and freedom of movement that they can exert. That objectively speaking, they're worse. So if the question is, who do you have more sympathy for? You're always going to pick the lesser of two evils, quote unquote, regardless of whether you think this organization is evil or not. But it's a really weird question to ask. It's a very ridiculous question to ask. But I suppose GB News might argue that people should sympathize with Israel. I suppose that's their point, is that Israel should be sympathized with, even though there are significant proportions of the British non-Muslim population, which I'll go into, that don't sympathize with Israel. And criticize Israel, and rightly should criticize Israel. Then another poll they raised, was only a quarter of British Muslims think that Hamas committed rape and murder on October the 7th. And now this is the thing, is like that there was some disputes as to what was happening on October 7th. I mean, there was the Israeli pundits, military experts, and people in the military of Israel making lies that became exposed later on as actual lies. That, like, objectively, that this was shown to be actually, this is incorrect. There was no beheading babies. I believe there was the only actually baby that had died there was only one baby that died, and it didn't seem to be from any direct bullet. It must have been from a stray round. So there was no direct killing of babies. Decapitation or not decapitation, but certainly we heard at the very beginning 40 beheaded babies was quite popular. And Piers Morgan said 40 dead babies, some of whom are decapitated. He tried to say some of whom decapitated, but that was in the context of everyone was saying 40 decapitated babies. So this was going around. Then it got disproven, despite the fact that people were coming on camera saying, I've seen it, or I have a picture of it, right? At the scene, there's some first responders and others and so on and so forth were actually shown to be lying. Military soldiers asked by journalists saying, yeah, I've seen it with my own eyes and didn't. So the issue is that there's a lot of questions. And of course, there was a recent UN report that looked at available evidence for rape on October the 7th, and they haven't found any evidence of rape. Now there might be testimonial evidence, but they have not found any other evidence beyond that, like in terms of forensic, in terms of video evidence and so on and so forth. And of course, Israel is refusing to let forensic examiners come in, impartial third-party examiners come in to do that. Like if rape happened, then we need to know, and we'll condemn it. Right? There's no dispute upon it.
It's a crime in Sharia law. Obviously, it's a crime in Sharia. Rape is a crime, a very serious one. So, if people are guilty of crimes, they must be called to account. But it seems the UN have not found any evidence of that.
Yeah, so far. But also the question, how it was worded was, do you the question was, do you believe that Hamas committed rape and murder? But the thing is, what if you believe they committed murder but not rape, right? So like there's no, well, can I just answer one of that or not? So this is the issue about the question. And I don't want to dwell too much into it because I didn't actually wasn't able to fully respond to it on the program, because they scattergunned this before I even was actually brought into the interview. They just scattergunned this at the opening of the show, as they say. Here's some statistics. Okay, now over to Abdullah. We have a few questions for you, not related to what they've just said. Right. So it's hard. So I kind of answer all of them. But it's a
debater's trick, isn't it? You overwhelm your opponent with loads and loads and loads of alleged facts, and then you don't have a time to respond to them. And it looks as if you made a really good case, whereas each of these claims needs to be forensically examined.
Yes. And as I said, I always point to a military analyst called Michael Clark, who is actually consulted by Sky News. He always comes onto Sky News war analysis of what's happening in Ukraine. He's probably regularly, if you've ever seen anything, Sky News analysis of the war in Ukraine, that's the guy they're speaking to, Michael Clark. So he was interviewed about what happened on October the 7th. And he put the point down that Hamas was trying to scupper a normalization deal with Saudi Arabia. They were trying to get hostages to negotiate to rescue Palestinian hostages, things like this. But he then said that Hamas were more successful than they expected. They didn't expect to actually get as far as they did, and they lost control of their operation almost after it started. And he said, and I'm quoting him, and then it turned into a spontaneous terrorist attack as opposed to a planned terrorist attack. So this is what he said. It turned into a spontaneous terrorist attack. So what it seems to be is that a number of fighters, and of those maybe not fitted with Hamas, committed war crimes outside of their orders and directive, as there was no command or control over them.